So it's always hard to cover a classic. Something that's so established and so critically acclaimed and beloved by readers that it's already embedded in the culture consciousness. So the challenge for me for this episode was to think about what can I say about this? What can I bring to the table that other people in the literary field haven't already discussed it? And honestly, I've thought about it over and over. I've been thinking about it all week and trying to, research different things people have written about this book and said about this book. And honestly, the only thing I realized, the only thing I can really bring to this is just my personal feelings about it and my own fan appreciation for it. So that's what I'm going to be doing an episode on. It's not going to be so much a review of Catch-22, more of a fan appreciation. So I will just go ahead and tell you. It's one of my favorite novels. If I were to make it top 10, and I probably will at some point, Catch-22 would definitely be in the top 5. It's one of the funniest novels I've ever read. It's one of the saddest novels. It's one of the deepest novels I've ever read. Also one of the most creative and interesting novels I've ever read. It's so many things in one. It's dark, it's sardonic, it's funny, it's clever, it's heartfelt, it's agonizing, it's deeply emotional, it's deeply philosophical. It's so many different things rolled into one story. For those who don't know, the story is about a bomber in World War II who is trying to get out of, fighting. He's trying to get out of the war. He's trying to get out of participation. And there's a policy. It's probably not the right word, but there is a rule, or a rule called Catch-22, stating that anyone who is insane can't go on bombing missions. However, the catch is, he who knows he's insane was disqualified. And so it's things like this, it's contradictions and paradoxes that make up not only the novel's humor, because the whole thing is filled with humorous use of paradox and contradictory language and contradictory sentences and ideas, but it works on the level of both, yeah, that's funny because it's kind of nonsensical, but at the same time it makes perfect sense. But it also works on a deeper level of absurdism. It works on the level of mirroring human nature, mirroring life, and how absurd and meaningless and pointless and nonsensical everything is. Not just war, but human behavior, the universe, just life, everything is nonsensical. And this book takes a very unflinching and unblinking view of all these things. And that's what makes me appreciate it. I like novels that are deep, but also dramatic or funny. I like fiction that is both funny and sad and emotional and thought-provoking and heartfelt. I like postmodern fiction, which this definitely falls into. This actually feels to me like a collaboration. If Kurt Vonnegut and Thomas Pynchon wrote a novel, this is kind of what I feel like it would read like. I personally like it because it has all the things I enjoy. It has all the elements I like. But also because I think was probably the first novel I read to make me understand, or to at least deeply feel truly the absurdism it's talking about. To feel like, oh my god, none of this shit matters. Nothing we do or think or feel or say matters. The only meaning we bring to it is, the only meaning it has is what we bring to it. And not only that, it's for the literary quality. It's for Joseph Heller's masterful use of prose, the way he uses language, the way he communicates these things so clearly. He's a very clean writer. He doesn't use unnecessary sentences. He doesn't focus on unnecessary metaphors. He doesn't uses everything perfectly and as it should be. There's not an unnecessary period or comma in there, which is interesting because it's a 500-page novel, and yet it reads like a 100-page novella. It's very clean. It's very fast, and the characters and events in it are so interesting. It keeps you hooked. And it's because of all the things I just talked about that make it so interesting. All the elements of absurdism and comedy, and dark humor, and also the one thing I like about it, structurally, it doesn't follow one character. There is a kind of a main character in the character of Yossarian, who is the bomber pilot, but it goes through everybody kind of in this group. It follows everybody in this kind of army camp, and all of them are eccentric. Even Yossarian, who is basically the main protagonist and the most sensible and level-headed one, has his own quirks and eccentricities. But there are definitely everyone else is just kind of a cast of knowing lunatics, loonies that are insane in their surroundings, I guess you could say. People who are mad and yet totally sane, totally cognate of what's going on, and yet at the same time just, throwing themselves into this madness. And that to me is probably the best word I would use to describe this novel. It's madness. Madness both in the sense of hilarious comedy, but also madness in the sense of despair and agony and deep, deep pain. and that's one of those things which I love. I love comedies that, at the same time, while I'm laughing at it, I want to cry. Like, it's humor that both punches you as well as tickles you. It's it's really hard hitting. I love stuff like that. I love stuff that's really just makes you feel, hits you with truth, while at the same time making you want to laugh at it. I can't recommend that enough. I would go into more kind of what the events of the novel are, but I feel like those are actually more just secondary as to the themes, the characters, and the ideas being talked about. Honestly, I feel like that was kind of the intention. It was more to be about, it's more about just hitting you in the gut with this absurdist hilarity and nonsense and sadness, more than it is about the day-to-day goings-on of this group on this island in the ocean that the novel is set on. It's interesting, and definitely for those who like absurd humor, dark humor, gallows humor, and also for those who like just random humor. There's a lot of, surprisingly for its time, considering it was published in the early 60s, there's a lot of humor that to me seems to anticipate modern, more random kind of comedy. There's certain dialogue in it that feels to me to be to kind of indicate what's to come later and what the kind of humor to become popular, which is very surprising for its time. But definitely highly, 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 highly recommend Catch-22. There's definitely a reason why this isn't a classic. It's a reason why it's considered a staple of American literature. It's definitely worth the read. I mean, I would personally want to give everyone a copy of it just so they could read it. To me, it's that good. I wish I could say more. I wish I could, speak as eloquently as, certain people have written about it. because I feel like everything I'm saying doesn't do it justice. It just needs to be experienced. It's one of those novels you just kind of have to experience it for yourself to fully get it. Something like Gravity's Rainbow or Infinite Jest, it's one of those you have to kind of just seek it out for yourself and experience